This is Transfer Talk. Deadline day is tomorrow and we look set to be having a busy day. Virgil van Dijk says he's committed to Liverpool. We'll hear from the captain in a moment. There's plenty for David Moyes to mull over. 3 of his players could be on their way out of the London Stadium. There could be incomings, including a new goalkeeper at Nottingham Forest as they gear up for a busy end to the window. Updates this hour on potential incomings at the City Ground. Morgan Rogers is on the verge of becoming a Premier League player. He's having a medical at Aston Villa right now. And could there be late transfer activity at Old Trafford? We're with Manchester United boss Erik Ten Hag this hour. Good afternoon to everyone at home and to Dan Bardell, Flex and James Savundra. Now, Liverpool captain Virgil van Dijk has cleared up comments that he made on his future at Anfield. It was reported on Monday that when asked if he saw himself as still being at Liverpool in the post-Klopp era, Van Dijk said, "That's a big question. I don't know." The defender has 18 months left in his contract and has since told Sky Germany that his words were exaggerated and he is 100% committed to the club.
It's much taken out of context, so just, No, obviously, to be 100% clear, I'm fully committed to the club. I love the club. I love the fans. It is fully taken out of context. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about, it's about us, and nothing has changed. 5 days ago, we weren't even speaking about my contract. So it's a bit, it's silly. But, my full focus is on making sure this year could be a very special year. And obviously, it was a big announcement, obviously, the last couple of days. It's been a shock to each one of us connected to the club. And I feel exactly what the fans have been feeling at that exact moment. And but, we mean business here. We want to crack on. We want to achieve things that we dreamed of in the start of the season. And we're in a good position. So let's give it our all. But like I said already in the start, don't get it twisted. I'm fully committed to the club, and I love it. And I love each and every say. I'm the captain, and we're going to go for it all, and let's see how that goes. It's just a human being, yeah. He's a bit of a father for us, as the squad. And, he's been that steady figure for so many years. And it's going to be strange not having him after the season. But, I don't want to speak too much about it because we're still in the mix of it. We still focus on, things we want to achieve.
Let's quickly talk about Virgil van Dijk then, James, and just remind the viewers of what he was apparently said in this interview at the weekend.
Yeah, there was a lot of fallout to this interview. He gave it after the victory over Norwich in the FA Cup at Anfield on Sunday. He said he was unsure if he'd be part of the post-Jurgen Klopp era. He was asked if he saw himself being part of this next chapter for the club following the end of this season. He said, "That's a big question. I don't know. The club will have a big job on their hands. That is well known. I'm very curious which direction that will go in. But when that will be announced, we will see our situation." So he joined from Southampton 6 years ago. His contract is up in the summer of 2025. So around 18 months left to go on that. And Jurgen Klopp spoke yesterday at his press conference as well. He said there's nothing to worry about regarding the future of the club and the players. But there, in that interview there he gave to Sky Germany, he said he's fully committed to the club. And he believes those words in the interview he gave on Sunday were taken out of context.
How vital is he to Liverpool, Dan?
Yeah, 6 years ago, that 75 million felt a lot, didn't it? But I think probably 6 years on, we can all look back and say, if you spread it out over that 6 years, it's been money very well spent. He's Liverpool's leader, he's Liverpool's captain at the moment, and at a time where there's going to be a lot of upheaval at Anfield. We don't know what's going to happen when Jurgen Klopp leaves. I don't really think Liverpool can afford to lose their best centre-back and lose their captain. And by the sounds of it, listening to him talk there, he doesn't really have a desire to leave. I think he's just saying no one knows what's going to happen when Jurgen Klopp leaves. It's a trip into the unknown for everyone at Liverpool there, obviously, with Jurgen Klopp being there for so long. You could look at it and say it could be the end of the journey for Klopp, for Van Dijk, but he's still at the top of his game. There was question marks after his bad injury that he had a few years ago, whether he'd come back the same player. I think he's more than answered those critics, and he's one of the best ever centre-halves that there's been in the Premier League.
Well, let's get to France now. We can speak to French football expert Jonathan Johnson to find out what's going on out there. Good afternoon to you, Jonathan. Let's start with an outgoing from Nottingham Forest, Aurel Mangala. What's the latest on his move?
Yeah, the expectation is that he will be completing a move to Lyon. I understand that's a permanent one, and obviously that will create a bit of space in the Forest squad for the arrival of Gio Reyna, which is also expected to happen later today. It's expected to be a busy one as well for Lyon, not just Mangala coming in, but you've also got the likes of Saïd Benrahma as well coming in from West Ham. They've been working on a deal for Nemanja Matic as well. So it's, Lyon bolstering themselves as they try to survive in Ligue 1 this season, which is something we haven't said about Lyon for many, many years. So big transfer window for them. And this could be the biggest expenditure of them all, given it's a permanent one.
Yeah, definitely. So Mangala and Benrahma both heading to Lyon. Tell us about a potential incoming, though, at Wolves.
Yeah, so you've got Noah Lemina coming in from PSG. Lemina obviously known thanks to his brother as well in part at the club. So it's going to be interesting to see them teaming up. Somebody who's had quite a lot of potential on the PSG ranks for the last couple of years. Loan move earlier this season didn't quite work out, so he's back looking at his future and the decisions being made to go to Wolves. So that's one I'm definitely keen to see how it pans out. Obviously, Wolves and PSG have been in plenty of contact this month as well, given that there were some talks regarding Hugo Ekitike, although he's still yet to move from PSG. So this is an interesting one, but certainly one that's more for the future.
What about Romain Favre? He was on loan at Lorient from Bournemouth, but that's been cut short. Why didn't that work out?
Yeah, Romain Favre going back to Bournemouth from Lorient, and obviously we know that there is a connection between the ownership groups of the two clubs, but that is one more to bolster the Bournemouth squad. Sort of had the squad not been as full back when he signed, he probably would have been part of it immediately, but now there is need for an extra body in the Bournemouth ranks, and Lorient looking to change things around, especially given there's been a bit of a deterioration between his relationship with the head coach there. So this is one that made sense for both parties and might enable Lorient to do a bit of late business. But I'm curious to see how Favre works out in the Premier League. He's been wanted by a number of top clubs across Europe for a while. Didn't work out for him at Lyon. He was wanted by Milan at one point. So Bournemouth definitely got an interesting player if Iraola can make him tick.
Well, Jonathan, another window goes by where Kylian Mbappe doesn't seem to be leaving Paris Saint-Germain, but we're going to be talking about it again in the summer, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll be talking about him regularly sort of in between now and the summer as well. This is one that I don't think is going to go away. I don't think it's going to be cleared up and resolved sort of in the next couple of days. It's one that I think is going to stretch on for another couple of months, at least until we know how PSG's season plays out on the pitch. Don't forget, you've got the Euros and the Olympics to look forward to, two tournaments that Kylian Mbappe fully intends to participate in. And that's obviously going to impact potential negotiations with the likes of Real Madrid. I think given the situation at Anfield, we can probably safely rule out Liverpool now in the race for his signature, given the amount of work that's going to need to be done there. But this is one that, really I think only, potentially points in two directions. One, that he stays in Paris, or two, that he goes to Madrid with Real. But I don't think we'll know the definitive answer to that for some time to come.
Thanks for everything this month, Jonathan.
Thanks a lot.
Now, it could be a very busy day at West Ham. Lyon have agreed a deal to sign forward Saïd Benrahma. As Jonathan was saying there, the deal is a loan with an obligation to buy for a fee of over £15 million. It's now up to the player to decide if he wants to make that move, but it is close. Right, Dan, how surprised are you that some might say it hasn't worked out for Benrahma at West Ham?
I think it's one of those deals where I don't think you could say it hasn't worked out, but I don't think you can say it's been a roaring success either. He's ultimately, scored in a cup final, in a cup that West Ham have won, so he'll always be remembered by West Ham fans by virtue of that penalty kick. Played 155 times for West Ham, scored 24 goals, 19 assists. It's not a bad record. People probably point that a lot of those goals were penalties, but he's been part of West Ham's progression and part of their journey. And we said earlier that now players that have been on that journey ultimately will get left behind, and West Ham are trying to buy a different level of play. And also, I don't think he's been a bad signing ultimately, Ben Rama, but this is a good move for him. Go into France, he'll kind of get to reignite his career as a regular starter. I guess that's been the problem for him in recent weeks. He hasn't been first choice for West Ham, and he'll go and get his move now and go with West Ham's best wishes, I would have thought. But yeah, I don't think he's been a bad signing, but I don't think anyone would turn around and say ultimately he's been a massive success either.
Well, Real Betis are expected to make an improved offer for midfielder Pablo Fornals after West Ham rejected their opening bid. The player does want to make the move. Flex, why would West Ham be willing to let him go?
I think for similar reasons to Ben Rama in terms of just reaching the end of the cycle. I think that what Dan said about Ben Rama being part of the success that they've had, and it's very similar for Fornals with that journey. He's a player who quickly sort of endeared himself to West Ham fans with his charm, with his attitude, with his work rate. And if you're talking about, again, iconic moments, in the last dying seconds against AZ Alkmaar when he was put through, when he sort of ran through and scored, and there was sort of an eerie silence along the ground, and you just hear West Ham fans going absolutely crazy in the away end. It was sort of circulating on social media. I remember seeing that. So he's got his place amongst their recent history as well, which he'll be really proud of. But, a chance for him as a Spaniard to sort of return home. It's a chance for him to play under the very manager who brought him to West Ham, Emmanuel Pellegrini, as well. People forget that. And I think it's no secret that he hasn't hit the levels recently as well that West Ham fans would have liked him to have reached, and they're going in a different direction. So I can see why for player and for club why it's probably the best move.
So that's outgoings, but time is running out for West Ham to bring players in. All right, potential moves for Ibrahim Osman and Jota. They're proving problematic to complete. But James, in terms of their transfer window in general, how would you sum it up?
Well, I think bringing in Calvin Phillips last week was a huge boost and a huge statement as well, considering the number of different parties interested in trying to sign him, not only in the Premier League, but also across Europe as well. I think moving Thilo Kehrer on was a good piece of business. He didn't feature in West Ham's first-team plans. The one area you would be slightly concerned about heading into the second part of the season would be that wide forward area. That's an area they're hoping to improve their options in. And if Cornet, if Ben Rama leave, then it does feel like they're slightly light in that area. But the options they've tried to sign, there's problems, as you mentioned, trying to bring those players in. I think if they are able to upgrade in that area, it would be a really good window. I still think it's a decent window. But crucially, coming out of every transfer window, it feels like this West Ham squad is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. They got to the Europa League semi-final a couple of seasons ago, and it felt like they were maybe outperforming the squad there. But I think now they've got a team and a squad that should now be ready to compete for a top six position every season now. I know last season was slightly different. They won the Europa Conference League, but were struggling towards the bottom of the table until the very end. I think now this squad looks like in every position there is competition for places. I think they're maybe 2 or 3 signings away from being pretty much where they want to be.
I think the best thing for West Ham is, so often a team gets to this place, the place that West Ham are in, pushing towards the top 6, maybe frightening the big boys a little bit. You'd say, they've lost Declan Rice, but you never hear about, Bowen might leave, someone's going to come in for Bowen. I think that's testament to where they are at the moment as a club. They've tied him down to a massive long contract. They're bringing in exciting players like Kudus, who I really think is going to be one of the finds of the season by the time we get to May. So I think West Ham are operating in a really good manner, aren't they? They're an impressive club at the moment. The way they're standing, the way they've gone about things, the way they've reacted to Declan Rice going. Clubs can quite often not go under, but they'll lose that talisman and not get their recruitment right and then start to dwindle and struggle a little bit. West Ham have done the opposite. I actually think they've got better. So fair play to West Ham. I think they're operating in a really clever way.
Well, the person who's going to West Ham for Sky Sports News tomorrow on deadline day is James Savundra. James, you might actually be the busiest tomorrow.
It could be pretty busy. You've got the two sides of it. You've got the outgoings. Potentially 3 players could depart tomorrow. If you look at Fornals, Ben Rama and Cornet, I'd say Fornals and Ben Rama look like the most likely to leave. Those deals are further ahead than Cornet. There's just interest at this stage of bringing him in on loan. Nottingham Forest are quite interested in that signing. But interlinked with that, we could see an arrival as well. Anything could happen on deadline day. West Ham perhaps would not want to leave themselves light if they were to let those 3 players go without bringing somebody in. And it's unsure if they sanction all 3 departures, they weren't able to bring in a player who they felt would make their squad stronger. So it could be a case some of these players stay, some go in the summer. But with the Europa League to compete in as well, West Ham want to leave themselves with enough numbers. We've seen in recent weeks, Jared Bowen missed a game. Paquetá's out until March. Kudos just returning from the African Cup of Nations. They have looked really light in that area. Danny Ings hasn't been a preferred option, really. It's not quite worked out there. Mikel Antonio's coming towards the end of his cycle. He's been out injured too. So I worry they're a little bit light there. I think David Moyes would love to bring in one more player of quality just to take them through to the end of the season, and then they'll reassess all their options.
Well, it is WSL deadline day. Today, coming up, we'll find out what deals to watch before the window shuts at 11 p.m.
is deadline day in the WSL. Myself and Ellen will be going through all the deals as they happen right up until the 11 o'clock deadline. 2 players, though, were going to dominate this window, so we thought. One being Mary Earps, one being Ellie Roebuck. Let's start by talking about all things Mary Earps, shall we? The FIFA best, 2-time FIFA best goalkeeper on the planet is obviously out of contract in the summer with Manchester United. We know there's long-standing interest from clubs, including Paris Saint-Germain. We know there's been long-standing interest from clubs all across Europe and, of course, Arsenal previously as well. However, it looks as though it's all gone quite quiet at the moment. That's because, obviously, they can talk to her now. Manchester United, obviously, under potential sort of new investment in the next month as well. So it looks as though that's going to be a deal for the summer and not one for deadline day. Potentially similar with Ellie Roebuck.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting one, and I actually think more of the story, we all said, would it be where Mary Earps go? For me, the fact that Ellie Roebuck hasn't gone is probably the bigger story. She hasn't been getting game time for City, hasn't made an appearance since that red card against Manchester United. She's been in and out of the squad. It's not even been that she's just been on the bench. You know, she's dropped out of the squad as well. Former England #1 under Neville. She's someone who has so much potential, a really young player, and the fact that she has now been dropped from the England squad, can't make her way back in, and hasn't been playing. The fact she hasn't moved this window, I think, is quite a surprise. Obviously, interest from Barcelona. There's a few dominoes and a few moving parts that need to go through there if she is to get that move, though. Yeah,
let's talk about those dominoes and moving parts before we move on, because Ellie Roebuck is out of contract in the summer. Ellie Roebuck has been in talks with Barcelona, potentially about a summer move. Obviously, you could talk to clubs from abroad. There is a chance that she could come in this window. The Spanish deadline is tomorrow, just to confuse things further, if they can get rid of their regular #1, Sandra Panos, who may well be off in the summer. So it's more likely to be a summer move. There is a very specific set of circumstances that can happen to see Ellie Roebuck go in the next 24 hours. Probably not, though. But Manchester City, they are very busy, aren't they?
Regardless of whether Roebuck goes or not, we expect that City will be the busiest club today. Laura Blenkilde-Brown, she's already had a medical. It's not a like-for-like replacement for Jill Roord, but obviously Manchester City losing Jill Roord to that ACL injury, and Blenkilde-Brown, as young as she is, would be a real welcome boost to that midfield. Looking at a fee of around £200,000 for the young England international under Nils Nielsen, City's director of football. They haven't been afraid to pay big money for the players that they want. Jill Roord is a prime example of that. So I think that could be really interesting. Like I say, not a like-for-like, but one who could come in and really develop for the future. You know, we've seen what City have done with the likes of Lauren Hemp. So I think that could be quite an exciting one. The other young player that we're expecting to see come through the door is Tara Hanlon, 18-year-old Irish international, set to join from the League of Ireland champion. She's had a trial at a WSL club before, and she's impressed there. One that plenty of WSL clubs have kept an eye on, but it looks like City have won the battle for her signature. We might see a third player through the door for City. Maybe. This is a big maybe.
This is an interesting one.
I think that would be in a striker position, and one of the names that I've seen go around for a lot of WSL clubs is the young Durham player Poppy Pritchard. Played against Manchester City really recently. She came on as sub in a game against them in the FA Cup. That was at Durham, and there was few players that really shone. Obviously, there's such a big gulf between the WSL and the Championship, but she was one of the players who came in and ran riot. She was all over the pitch. She was chasing any ball down. England under-19, like I said, a lot of interest from other WSL clubs. So Poppy Pritchard, a name to watch in the next few hours of this WSL window.
Yeah, City obviously looking to win their first title for a long, long time. They're very much in the WSL hunt. They are, like you said, looking to replace Jill Roord with a big name signing from Aston Villa. They're also going to sign a Republic of Ireland international, maybe even 3 deals in one day. That is what the WSL title race did. We'll bring you up to date on everything else going on throughout the rest of the day. An 11 o'clock deadline for deals for domestic ones. And transfer news, Interest and Celtic have agreed a loan deal for Norwich City for Adam Eden. Now, it's understood there is no option to buy. They will, of course, undergo medical in London today. Meanwhile, Bologna striker Sidney van Hooijdonk is due to travel to the UK this afternoon and have a medical out of his loan move to Norwich. Well, that move has an option. Now, don't forget, it has been a quiet month for Manchester United this window. Could all that change? We'll be up next with Erik ten Hag. We'll hear from him soon.
See several players join. Let's start with Giovanni Reina. He'll fly to Nottingham today for a medical ahead of a loan deal. We'll talk about that in a moment. But James, we'll come to you now because news of potentially a goalkeeper coming in.
Yeah, which seems remarkable considering Nottingham Forest signed 2 seemingly first-choice goalkeepers in the summer, but neither have proved to be completely convincing. Matt Turner made an error for Forest yesterday against Arsenal. Nuno Espirito Santo given little away about strengthening in the goalkeeper department. But my colleague Rob Dorset and I understand that Forest are interested in a deal to bring Sam Johnstone to the City ground before the end of this transfer window. Johnston's got no desire to leave Palace. He's found himself out of the first-team picture in the Premier League since he got injured in December, because Dean Henderson is there now. He joined in the summer, but he's desperate to remain in the England picture. He's currently second-choice goalkeeper with England, but he's worried about his position ahead of the Euros this summer. Now, we know finances are tight at Nottingham Forest. Palace don't want to sell either, which makes this deal complicated. But it's thought that a bid of £12 to £15 million may bring Palace to the negotiating table. That fee may be beyond what Nottingham Forest can afford at the moment with the PSR restrictions they have, but there will be a bit more wiggle room if Oral Mangala's move to Lyon is completed for a deal in excess of £200 to £20 million even. So Sam Johnston's not pushing for a move, but we wait to see how far Nottingham Forest look to go to try and bring him in this window. OK, and so that one potentially still on the cards, but Giovanni Reina looks like he is going to the City ground. Dan, how big a deal is this for Forest?
Yeah, it's a bit like the Timo Werner deal to Tottenham. It's kind of low risk for Nottingham Forest, bringing in a forward player that's kind of lost his way over the last few years, but does have a high ceiling. He's recently changed agents, according to reports, and gone with George Mendes now. So George Mendes doing his best straight away to get him a move. Forest, they've got Hudson-Odoi, they've got Alanga on the flanks, but they don't have much cover after that. Dominguez has been playing there in recent weeks, so maybe there is room for another forward option in the Nottingham Forest attack. But this is a player that a few years ago was highly rated, part of the German Cup winning team that the Dortmund had a few years ago. So Reina kind of just needs to revitalise his career. Nuno might be the right type of manager for him to come and work under and try his hand in the Premier League. But yeah, I don't think Forest really taking a risk because there's no option to buy. There's no necessity to buy at the end of this deal. So Forest will have a potential high-level player for the rest of the season, and hopefully he can help push them towards safety.
Now, as promised, let's get to Manchester United. Erik ten Hag has just been speaking to the media.
There's been a lot of talk about Marcus Rashford the last few days. What is the situation there, and how's his reaction to it all been?
He has taken responsibility, and for the rest it's internal matter. Case closed.
How's his reaction been, though, around the training ground, and because he's in the squad against Wolves, I presume?
But as I said, case closed.
Okay. In terms of the squad tomorrow, I'm guessing Marcus will be in it. Will Andre Onana, any Mason Mount, is it too soon for him?
Mason Mount is too soon, yeah. But Andre Onana will return.
Erik, I appreciate you saying case closed. What does it say about the respect that players have for you that these kind of things keep happening and you keep having to deal with situations that then you say is an internal matter?
It's nothing to do with that. So, but as I said, let's focus on the game and let's move on. I think the statement is clear, and we have to focus on winning football games.
Do you think you're imposing the right discipline on your squad to be able to win football matches, which is clearly what you need to do now?
If nothing to do with that with me, but in football you need discipline, and that is on the pitch, but yeah, also off the pitch, because also there is a line between. So, and every player knows this, every professional knows this, what is required.
Do you find it distracting?
So, as I said, we have to focus on winning football games, and that's all that matters. And every top professional knows what is required.
Tim. Erik, you got the best out of Marcus Rashford last season.
Yeah.
How do you go about getting him back to his best form this season? Because you are going to need him between now and the end of the campaign. You can't bring another striker in. And is he in the right mindset, and does he have the right focus to get back to his very best?
So, last 2 Premier League games, 2 goals, 2 assists. And you see there's developing a strong bond between Rasmus Højlund and Marcus Rashford. And we want to continue the process.
How would you describe the confidence and spirit in the group at the moment, Erik, with the results that you've had lately and the targets you've got for the rest of the season?
I think we are quite confident, and because on our best days we can beat anyone, but on our worst days we go down to certain limits, what is not acceptable. So we have to push our limits to high levels. That we on worst days that we get our results in, and then we know when we are on our best that we can beat everyone. I think, and everyone in the squad is very convinced about this, and also they know that now players getting returned from injuries, from long-term injuries, the team will be stronger, and also that helps the motivation and it helps the mood and the spirit in the team.
Obviously, like you say, that there has been matches this season where it's been really high, and there's been matches where it's been really low. Going to Wolves, do you know what to expect from your team more now? Are they more stable than they've been at other points?
Yeah, of course. Every game, it's we have to see as a final, and every game we have to get the best out of it. And this team has so much experience; they know that, and and I'm quite positive. Now we have our players back, although some they need some match rhythm, but I think the line into this game was quite good. Like they had a friendly game, they had now a cup game, and now you go into a Premier League game. So the build-up so it was quite good for those players. So now we have to make the next step as a team, but also some individuals get back in their best form.
Erik, how important is it to have those players back in the squad now? Because the competition for places, let's say in the first half of the season, wasn't really there because of so many injuries. Players are coming back from long-term layoffs. Second half of the season important, obviously, for that chase for the top 4.
Yeah, clear. We know we have to catch up, first place, but players know that. But the team will be stronger when you miss players in crucial positions, and that weakens your team. And especially when you have to swap, so every game almost, that doesn't help the routines in the way of play, and that is also we have seen some misunderstandings. But first of all, now is keeping the players fit. Second is get them into better form. And then the third, when we get that, and then the results will be better.
There'll be more to come from Erik ten Hag throughout the day here on Sky Sports News. But now to Newcastle, and after what looked to have been a turbulent end to the window, Eddie Howe looks like he's kept hold of the players being linked with moves away. One of those flex was Miguel Almiron. The Saudi Arabian transfer window is now closed. He was subject of a bid from Al Shabab out there. What does him staying mean for Newcastle?
I just think they could get maybe a bit of a period of calm, to be honest with you. I think there was a concern at the beginning of the window with what had been said by the CEO in terms of them potentially needing to lose players. Eddie Howe has been very vocal in press conferences talking about the frustrations that they've got with the financial situation they find themselves in, which, listen, for a lot of clubs, they would sort of maybe not sympathise with that because Newcastle have been able to spend but can't spend anymore because of the revenue that they generate. So it is kind of a good problem to have. But, you know, in terms of how Newcastle fans would have felt hearing that, it might have been slightly worrying. Would they lose the likes of Isak? Could they lose the likes of Bruno Guimaraes? And during this window, Kieran Trippier, Callum Wilson, and of course Miguel Almiron. And it looks like they're kind of all set to stay, which gives Eddie Howe that peace of mind that he's not going to have any big pieces of his puzzle leaving the club that can create some instability until for the rest of the season. So I think they'll be quite happy the fact that they've managed to keep these players and they can get a little bit of calm because that's what they've needed.
Dan, they've always said in Newcastle that they did want to bring someone in this window, but they'd have to sell before they can buy. If they're not selling, they maybe can't do anything, but do they even need to do anything?
Didn't look like it last night. I actually feel like getting to the end of the window, keeping the squad together, I actually think that might be quite galvanising for Newcastle. Obviously, they won the game last night, and the celebrations with the away fans, it felt like that's a club that's all together, that's all pulling in the same direction. I think in an ideal world, yes, as you say, they've had injuries, they've got players missing. In an ideal world, they'd probably have bought a goalkeeper in this window. They'd have probably bought in a midfielder as well, but they simply haven't got the ways and means of doing that at the moment. So they haven't lost anyone. I'd take that as a positive, like Flex says, at this point, and I don't think they're going to get... They're obviously not going to have anywhere near the season that they had last season. I think, it was such a magnificent season. Probably a one-off, but I do think that result last night, I do think it will galvanise them. I do think it'll bring everyone together again, and I do think they'll start pushing up the league and perhaps go on a run again. But I think getting to the end of the window without breaking that team up, and if they can get a few players fit, I don't necessarily think it's completely the end of the world. They've kind of got through the storm of injuries that they've had, and they'll start to get players back now as well.
James, what about in the summer, though? Can you see major changes then?
Yeah, I think in this window they've been battling to try and keep their senior players together, which they have successfully done. I know there's a day left in the window, but I think Eddie Howe will be able to keep that squad together. There is the knowledge, though, they need to sell to buy. There's an acceptance that there will be a bit of an overhaul in the summer. There's 6 players out of contract, and the CEO, Darren Eales, spoke about the fact that at least one key player could be allowed to leave in the summer for them to just bring players in. But Eddie Howe's keen not to destroy the balance and harmony in the squad at the moment. So the playing pool won't be completely overhauled, but there will be significant changes. I don't think they saw January as a window where they'd be able to get value. I think that changes slightly in the summer. I think they're still going to be affected by the same rules, but the fact is they'll be in a better place from a PSR point of view. If they keep increasing their commercial revenue, they keep qualifying for European competitions like the Champions League, that will give them more headroom to spend. So they've been in a better place in the summer, but it won't be as exciting as it has been in previous transfer windows for Newcastle. So there won't be a case of them being able to sign 4 or 5 high-profile players. They might be able to. If they had to do so, they'd have to sell a lot of the players they've brought in.
How worrying is that those quotes, Flex, or the interview that Eales did, and what Eddie Howe said in his news conference? The Newcastle fans will be desperate to keep players like Bruno Guimaraes, Alexander Isak, Sven Botman. They're the ones who are, amongst others, who are worth an absolute fortune. How worried will they be that one of them might go? And there's no guarantee they will, of course.
Yeah.
But how worried will they be that one might go?
Naturally, there will be cause for concern, especially with those 3 players, of how instrumental they've been to the success that Newcastle have had. But I think there's also has to be an acceptance from Newcastle fans, which I think there absolutely is, because, like you said, they're a fan base right now that are all going in the right direction and trusting in the infrastructure, what's been put in front of them, because they can see the results pretty much where they've actually been overachieving in such a short space of time and probably got too good too quickly, which is why they're actually under these financial constraints in the first place. So there will be an acceptance from Newcastle fans, I believe, that actually Eddie Howe's the right man to steer this ship. We understand that maybe one might have to go, but we also trust in the leadership model that's now here that they'll make the right decisions to spread that money effectively and accordingly to bring in the right player/players to kick the squad on even more. So I think it's one of those where I think Newcastle fans just need to just keep calm. They've had a fantastic rise in this last 18 months to 2 years, and they've gone on a great journey, and just keep trusting in that process because it's clearly going in the right direction. Yes, there's been a drop-off because, like Dan said, nobody expected them, including themselves, to reach the levels that they did last year. But it's a process. You can't go from being nowhere near the top 6 and trying to push into that top 6 or traditional top 6 overnight. Especially, you can maybe fast forward it on the pitch by people are out overperforming and maybe some of the top teams on the pitch are not performing as well. But as we're seeing off the pitch from a PSR perspective and budgets and stuff, Newcastle United reported £250 million of revenue. And if you look at Spurs, who haven't even put theirs out yet from last year, they're at 440 odd million pounds. Manchester City are at 700 odd million pounds, etc., etc. That shows just how difficult it is for them to break in. We've seen Leicester knock on the door for a few seasons, not quite get Champions League, and then they've had to, not be able to bring in players, have problems, financially. It's so hard to be a self-sustaining club at that level, which is exactly what Newcastle want to do. So it's for the long haul. They can't just think short term, and I don't think they will.
Right, coming up, we'll take a look at players who could be on the move before the window closes, and we'll get some deadline day predictions from the panel. Deadline day is tomorrow. We've picked out some players that could be on the move before that 11 p.m. deadline when the window closes, and one of these certainly more likely to move than the others. But James, what's going on with Armando Broja?
Well, yesterday reported that Chelsea rejected a straight loan offer from Wolves for Broja, and we've reported throughout the window that Chelsea, if they were to let him go in this window, they'd prefer it to be a permanent transfer rather than anything temporary. But Chelsea need to sell players in this window to be able to bring players in to stay in line with PSR. Bear in mind how much they spent over the course of the last 18 months or so. And we understand Chelsea want around £50 million, but clearly there are doubts that any interested club can raise an acceptable offer to tempt Chelsea to sell him in this window. Just scored twice so far this season, still trying to get back up to speed after suffering that ACL injury, which saw him miss more than a year of football. But we wait to see if any clubs come in between now and the end of the window, and maybe Chelsea willing to accept an offer which falls below their current valuation, which we understand is around £50 million.
Flex, for the player, though, I can understand what's right for the club right now, but what's right for Broja?
It's always quite hard to answer this from the outside in, because essentially, obviously, they're in control of their careers. I mean, Armando Broja could be looking at it like, I really want to make it work here. This is a difficult time where there is no sort of flagship striker. There isn't sort of someone who's nailed down that position. He could believe in himself beyond the realms of possibility that he could be that man and really believe in himself ability-wise. But then he could look at it to say, well, how realistic is that? I've had a loan spell out at Southampton. I've had a big injury. It's important for me at this age to actually maybe not just look at the prestige of playing for Chelsea and the location and maybe the money that I'm on and all these sorts of things off the pitch, but to actually look at, I need game time. I need to go and make my own career. I need to go and make my own story. And I know it's not exactly transferable, but you look at what Cole Palmer did going from Manchester City to Chelsea as a young player, and now he's pretty much the face of Chelsea. Now, I'm not suggesting that Royer is as good as Palmer, but what I mean is in terms of writing his legacy and saying I can go and be my own man and start my career properly and have that consistency at a club and find a permanent home, I think that would probably be best for him because he just needs to play football. But at the moment, I think Chelsea obviously don't have somebody in Nicholas Jackson who's very reliable in terms of goal scoring. Yes, he's done okay, but he's still quite raw, one for the future. Christopher Nkunku's had injury problems and isn't probably an out-and-out 9. Cole Palmer can play up there if there's a big bit of injuries. Maybe sometimes Raheem Sterling is a false 9. They haven't quite nailed it down. So I think for Royer, he might be in a little bit of limbo thinking, well, they're not going to bring anyone else in. I'm actually going to get some game time from now to the end of the season. But how realistic is he to be a long-term sort of part of Pochettino's plans?
Dan, at the start of the window, although no one thought it would make any sense, we thought that Conor Gallagher might be on the move. Now, how surprised would you be if he did move?
Very at this point, because they'd need to replace him. This is a player that's been captain a number of times. He's a player that's played most weeks for Chelsea. When he's been fit, I think Chelsea aren't in the position to replace him at this short notice, I wouldn't say. And Gallagher's a player that Pochettino clearly rates and clearly wants to keep hold of. So to let this one go all the way down to the last few hours, the last days, I don't really understand why Chelsea would sanction that move. I actually think if he stays as the season goes on now, as Caicedo settles in and we're seeing signs of that now, I think Gallagher will get freed up a little bit to play a similar kind of role that he played at Crystal Palace, and I think then that's when you'll see the best of Conor Gallagher. I think he just needs a goal. That's all that's missing from his game at the moment. He's actually performing at a really high level, at a really consistent level. So Gallagher's a player that Chelsea can't afford to lose at this stage of the window, in my opinion.
Would you expect him to be in demand if Chelsea actually wanted to do a deal?
I think there'll be definitely teams that would take Conor Gallagher in their starting 11, absolutely. I think Conor Gallagher's maybe overperformed, I think, as well, and surprised a lot of people, especially with the investment that Chelsea have put into their midfield with the likes of Moises Caicedo, with the likes of Lavia, who hasn't quite got going yet, with the likes of Enzo Fernandez in the January before. Of course, second for minutes played, but you look at where he's first. Assists with 4 in that Chelsea midfield. You're looking at the amount of tackles he's made, he's first on that. Interceptions, he's first on that. Ball recoveries, he's first on that. And these are stats that you would expect Moises Caicedo to have. If you're being honest with the investment that's been put into that. And I think the fact that he's performing so highly and is with the greatest respect to Conor Gallagher is probably an indictment that Chelsea's midfield, like what you said, Dan, they haven't quite got going yet, but the expectation is that they will. But will teams want somebody who is, really good in the press, is a good leader, he's at it, he's honest, he can play further up, can play as a more sitting player as well, can get about the pitch. Of course, he'll be much wanted by a lot of Premier League teams. But I do think that the fact that he's been the best midfielder at Chelsea, I think that's probably not what a lot of people expected, given the investment they've had in that area of the pitch.
James, the Chelsea player up there is Trevor Chalobah. What's best for him right now?
I think if there is a good move on the table for him, then he should take it. We're not quite sure where he fits into Mauricio Pochettino's plans because he's not been fit for Pochettino, so we're not sure where he is in the pecking order. But when everybody is fit, you consider the options they have. Disasi, Badiashile, Colwill, Fofana, when he returns, and Thiago Silva, though Thiago Silva will probably depart at the end of the season, if not after that. So you look at those options there and you struggle to see Trevor Chalobah being a first-choice defender for Chelsea. He's still young, but he is 24 years of age now, and you look at what's happened to Mark Guéhi, and you look what happened to Fikayo Tomorrow when they left Chelsea, having come through the academy and been so successful after departing. It feels like if there is a good move for him, potentially to a Premier League club, West Ham have looked at him, Fulham have looked at him as well, then it's something that definitely makes sense.
OK, so that's Trevor Chalobah. Morgan Rogers will have a medical at Aston Villa today ahead of completing a transfer from Middlesbrough. He's arrived at the training ground. That was this morning, following agreement of a deal between the clubs. Villa will pay an initial £8 million, which could potentially rise to £16 million if all of the add-ons are met. Dan, why are Villa after him?
If Villa need another option in their attack, I think. I don't think he's someone that's going to come in and start immediately, but it looks like John Duran's going to be out for a few months. So essentially they're missing a player in the forward line now for a couple of months. He's done well in the Championship, but it's only half a season. That would be my reservation. But certainly every time I've seen him this season, I've liked the look of him. I think he's got really, really quick feet, shifts the ball, gets shots off. I think he's a player that's just found somewhere at Middlesbrough that's allowed him to flourish and allowed him to grow. And Unai Emery, the one thing he has done as Villa manager, he's improved every player that's worked under him. So if he can get hold of Morgan Rogers, a player with undoubted potential, you'd hope that there's room for him to grow and become a top player as well.
Right, OK, transfer deadline day, predictions then. James?
I think Chelsea will be tested with an offer for one of their homegrown players, whether it's Breuer, whether it's Gallagher, whether it's Chalobah. It won't be at their valuation, but with the PSR constraints, they might be tempted by an offer which falls slightly lower than what they want for one of those players.
OK, right. Ambiguous. Flex?
Earlier on, I went with Gary O'Neill. He's going to get the job done. Super Gary O'Neill. He's going to get a striker through the door. Wolves fans deserve it. They've been doing so well. You know, beat Manchester United tomorrow. Hopefully they don't. But, you know, they could go above them. That's how well they're doing, Wolves, this season, when a lot of people had them tipped to go down. So I really like what Gary O'Neill's done. He's going to get it done. And I'm going to say Burnley are going to do some business. I think they're going to be a little bit worried, Luton pulling away. I just think a Vincent Kompany might say, I'm going to do it.
Dan, 5 seconds.
Chelsea, Pochettino said he wanted a striker who's quite vocal. I just think maybe they'll make a bid in the final hours.
OK, well, tomorrow is the big one. It is deadline day. Our coverage starts at 7 a.m. Transfer Centre is next. More from Erik Ten Hag on Marcus Rashford and all the latest transfer deals as they happen.